paying too much attention to. A product that is very important to you, very versatile, convenient, inexpensive, easy to store. What's this, you're thinking? Is this a new type of soap? No, skim milk powder. I think that you'll be very interested in some of the things we can do with it, perhaps different dishes that you may not have thought of using skim milk powder with. These dishes are very nutritious, and I think you'll be interested in hearing about them. Take a look at this chart now, and this will help explain what skim milk actually is. As you can see, regular whole milk has about 4% of butterfat in it. If some of that butterfat is removed, if about half of it is removed, you have what is called 2% milk that you see in your supermarket. If all of the butterfat is removed, you have skim milk. Now this skim milk is available in several forms, and the one we're talking about this morning is a dried form. It's available in several different size containers, right from a 4-ounce up into a 5-pound container, and is a very handy thing to have around your kitchen. Take a look at this chart, and it will explain some of the various types of milk that you do see commonly available in your supermarket, in your kitchen. I'm sure you're familiar with all of them. It also points out the differences in price to you. Look at the difference in the price of fresh whole milk and the skim milk powder. It's really worth thinking about, isn't it? We've mentioned some of the common forms of milk, and you've looked at some of the prices. I'd like to mention to you too the mixing of skim milk powder. It's very easy. It usually only has to be briskly stirred into cold water. No problem doing it. You might prefer to use your blender. You might prefer to use your mixer, but they're not really necessary. I could mention to you, when you're mixing your skim milk powder, if you're using one container all the time, over and over again, it's handy. For instance, if you're using something like this, one bottle over and over again, you can write the proportions of skim milk powder and water on the bottle with, say, a felt pen or on a piece of tape. Then you don't have to work it out each time. This sort of thing can save you a lot of time. Keep in mind, when you have mixed your skim milk powder, it's known as reconstituted milk at this point, and it's important that it be treated as any other dairy product. It should be kept in your refrigerator. Now, take a look at chart number 3 here. See how nutritious this product is. Look at all the various nutrients that your family will get from skim milk powder. Notice how important some of these various nutrients are. There are several different ones that are important to your family, particularly the calcium and the phosphorus, important to all children growing. We can talk about different ways that skim milk powder can be used. One that often hasn't occurred to people, very, very handy, mix skim milk powder in with cereal. Take it along when you're hiking or camping. When you get there, you just add water. Your cereal is ready to eat. No problem with carrying the extra milk, having to keep it refrigerated, and so on. You can use skim milk powder in baking. You can add it to your bread when you're making it, your cookies, all these various products, and they will be enriched nutritionally. Your family will benefit from them. Of course, you all know that you can use the skim milk powder as well with any of your milk dishes that you're making. You can add it to any milk dish instead of fresh milk. It saves you a lot of money. It's usually quite easy to use. And of course, the last point that you'll want to keep in mind, low-calorie dishes. Skim milk powder is low in calories as well, as you can see on the charts there. Look at the comparison, calories for skim milk and for whole milk. Now, to get into some of the cooking, which you will be interested in seeing, the first thing that I'd like to make for you this morning is a corn chowder recipe. This is a good substantial soup that your family will enjoy. I've started by taking 5 slices of bacon, sautéing them, getting them crisp. Once they were crisp, I removed them from the pot and I drained them. Put this on something so I don't burn the counter. I removed the bacon from the pan and put it just in a dish on the side so that you will be able to use it later on. I then added to the pan, into the bacon fat that was there, I added onion, half a cup of onion. This was sautéed until it was soft. After the onion was in there, we added 1½ cups of potatoes, diced. You can see them there, a nice large chunk so that you know what you're working with. A a cup of boiling water, some salt, and some pepper. These were simmered until they were soft, and now we're at the stage where I'll pick up this recipe and you can see it as it goes on. Now, we've got the vegetables done. We're going to add a tablespoon of flour, which I measured beforehand, and I'm going to mix that with 1½ cups of skim milk powder, and I've pre-measured it just to save a little time on camera. This is 1½ cup skim milk powder. You mix the two of them together, flour, skim milk powder, mix them, and then you add them to your soup. That bowl is a little small for this, but you get the idea. It's very easy to mix your dry ingredients together before adding them to the rest of your dish. Skim milk powder and flour mixed into the vegetables. Mix them gently so that you don't break up the vegetables too much. Now when you have those mixed, you add 2 cups of cold water, reheated on the stove. That's looking a little thick right now until the water is added. Two cups of cold water. Put it back on the stove and reheat it. I should mention to you while I'm doing this that all of the recipes I will be preparing this morning in this demonstration are found in this booklet, which is printed by the Department of Agriculture. It's called Skim Milk Powder. It gives a lot of good recipes, more than I will be preparing today. It's a very good reference, gives you a lot of information. You can have a copy of it after watching the tape by asking the person that's doing the demonstration for you. Whoever's showing you the film will give you a copy of the booklet. That's back on the stove to reheat now. When it's hot, we'll be adding a 19-ounce tin of creamed corn. You will then have a very nutritious, healthy, filling lunch for your family. Just before it's served, when you put it in the bowl, you sprinkle a little of that bacon on it that you started with. It adds flavor, it adds color, and you have a very filling, nutritious lunch for your family. That's heating up very quickly. It's nearly hot now, so I think I'll add the creamed corn before going on to the next recipe. Now that just sits on the stove and heats up until you're ready to serve. Don't bring it quite to a boil, just heat it, and it's ready for your family. The next dish that I thought you would be interested in seeing is our old favorite, baked custard. You've been making baked custard a lot, I'm sure. You know how healthy it is. It can be even better for your family if you're using skim milk powder. Now, this morning we're starting with 4 eggs. You beat them slightly, just to break them up. There we go. Now we have these eggs beaten slightly. We've added 1 1/3 cups of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and we're ready to add the skim milk powder. This can be added dry. It doesn't have to be mixed with the water first. Skim milk powder goes in. Mix it around. We'll add 1/2 cup of cold water to this. Always seems a little thick at this point. 1/2 cup of cold water. Check your measurements carefully. Your recipes will be more exact when you're finished. They'll be more enjoyable and you won't have any unusual surprises if you've checked measurements carefully. 1/2 cup of cold water. Then you add 2 cups of hot water. Now, the reason for adding the hot water at this point is just simply to speed the recipe up. If you are not in a hurry, you can add all your water at the same temperature. It can all be cold water. It doesn't matter. But if you're in a hurry, you're wanting to speed it up, add 2 cups of hot water. Hot water from the tap, or if you're really in a hurry, you can add it carefully using boiling water. Now from here on with this recipe you're back to a standard baked custard recipe. That looks like it wants a little beating before it goes in the oven. Right, now our custard is nearly prepared. I think I'll beat it a little just to make it a little more smooth, make sure there are no lumps in it at all. That has it quite smooth. The last stage before it goes in the oven, we add vanilla. Now the measurement of the vanilla is not quite so precise, but about half a teaspoon added. Mix it in. Now as you recall with any baked custard, this is a dish that is oven poached. It goes in the oven in a pan of water to cook it slowly and evenly. I have a pan ready and waiting. Take it over to the oven. And by the way, you notice that I was using an oven-proof dish. Any dish that you're going to put in the oven must be Pyrex or an oven-proof glass. I have a pan here with water in it, ready to receive the dish into a medium oven. Now a large custard like that will take about an hour to finish. I'd like to go on now to another dish that's another old favorite in your kitchen, but one that you will be able to improve nutritionally. This is mashed potatoes. I have started out with your ordinary potatoes, peeled, put into boiling salted water the way you do every day, every night for supper. They've been boiled until they're just tender, and now I'm going to demonstrate a way to improve them nutritionally for your family. They'll taste about the same, but your family will get that much more in the way of calcium, phosphorus, vitamins, and so on. You start by draining your potatoes, but save the water they were cooked in. This is very important. This water should be used as much as possible in whatever you're cooking. You can use it in soups and stews and gravies and so on. Save the water they were cooked in. There, you have your potatoes being mashed, ready to be mashed. Mash them as you would ordinarily. Once you've got them broken up, you add butter, which I'm sure you usually do, or margarine. There's about 3 tablespoons there. I measured it before. 3 tablespoons of margarine added. Skim milk powder. We have about half a cup of skim milk powder here. This is added to the potatoes, mixed in. And now you use some of your cooking liquid that the potatoes were cooked in as liquid with that skim milk powder. Instead of just using ordinary milk, you're getting more nutrition by adding the skim milk powder because you can use more of it. That was about 1/4 of a cup. You can bring it up to about 1/3 of a cup of the cooking liquid. Add it in. Mash your potatoes. You should get a good fluffy potato. If you like your potatoes drier, you don't add as much liquid. This is a real whipped potato that we have here. And think how nutritious that is, because you've added the equivalent of almost twice as much milk there. This is milk that your family would not normally be getting. And as I say, if you like them a little drier, you add a little less liquid. There, ready for supper. Now, the next dish I would like to show you is macaroni and cheese, our old favorite, the children's favorite. I think it's just about everyone's favorite. It's low priced, very nutritious, and I'd like you to see a way of using skim milk powder in the preparation of macaroni and cheese. I've cooked the macaroni already, waiting there for us. Now we'll make up the sauce. We start with 3 tablespoons of margarine, pre-measured. 3 tablespoons of margarine. And when that's melted in the saucepan, you add 3 tablespoons of flour. This is your standard cream sauce with cheese added, a general basic cream sauce recipe. 3 tablespoons of margarine, 3 tablespoons of flour, 3 tablespoons of flour now. Remember, as you're using the measuring spoons, level measurements always. 1, 2, 3. This is the general all-purpose flour. Three tablespoons of flour. Mix it in. The margarine is melted. As you can see, that's mixing in pretty well now. Give it another minute or so on the heat. Good. Now, salt. 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Back to our measuring spoons. It's a little difficult with a salt shaker, but do it over something else so that if you spill, it won't go all over your floor. Three-quarters of a teaspoon of salt. 3/4 of a teaspoon of dry mustard. This just adds a little flavor, a little bite, makes it a little bit more interesting. Remember again level measurements, especially when you're using something as powerful as mustard. You don't want too much in. 3/4 of a teaspoon. Mix that in. A little paprika, which is the very mild red pepper, about 1/8 of a teaspoon. This is just in for color, so a little more or less doesn't make very much difference. It improves the color a little. Then just a dash of cayenne pepper, and as you recall, this is the very hot one, so you don't want very much. It's better to shake it out in your hand first rather than put it straight into your sauce. Make sure you don't get too much. Now we've got most of the spices and flavors and so on in there. 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. You've got your dry mustard, paprika, cayenne pepper. That's mixed and melted pretty well there now. Now we can add 3/4 of a cup of skim milk powder. This is pre-measured. 3/4 of a cup skim milk powder. Mix it round. Stir it all up. At this point it's looking very dry. But we then add 1.5 cups of water. Check your measurements carefully. 1.5 cups of water. And your sauce is well on its way. Once this is all mixed together well and blended well, then the only other ingredient in your sauce is, of course, the cheese. 2 cups grated cheese. That's about 8 ounces of cheese grated. Gives you 2 cups of grated cheddar cheese. And you can use whatever type appeals to your family the most. You can use a very tangy old cheese, a mild cheese, whichever your family enjoys. Cheese goes in, and it's heated until it melts. That'll take a moment or so to blend together and melt in. Now, once that's all melted together, your sauce is done. You simply pour it over your macaroni, put it in a Pyrex baking dish, an oven-proof baking dish, put it into your oven for a few minutes to brown. You might as you can see, that's getting pretty well blended there. It's got a little bit of melting and warming to do, but it's nearly ready. Once it's all melted together, we'll add it to the macaroni, put the macaroni and the cheese into a Pyrex baking dish, into the oven. If you wish, I have a few crumbs. You can add a few buttered crumbs on top. These are just ordinary breadcrumbs. I keep a few in the kitchen, ready to use. That's going to take a minute or two now to melt. It's starting. But I think we'll leave that on the stove for a few minutes. Turn the heat down so that it's not going to burn. Leave it and come back to it in a few minutes. Now, just before we finish this demonstration, I wanted to show you a few other things that you can use your skim milk powder with. This is a whipped topping. Now it will get a little stiffer with a bit more whipping, but this is a whipped topping you can use instead of whipped cream. And take a look at this chart. Look at the comparison in price and calories between whipped cream and a whipped skim milk topping. 300 calories to nearly 1,400, just a few cents compared to nearly $1.50. Isn't that an interesting thing to keep in mind if you've got a party coming up? Now, just to review, think of all the advantages of skim milk powder that we've talked about today. It's inexpensive. You saw the comparison there on the prices, how much you can save using skim milk powder for your family. It's convenient. It's easy to buy, easy to use, easy to carry with you wherever you're going, camping, hiking, in your home, and so on. The storage is no problem. You need no refrigeration until it's mixed up. No problem that way. You recall how nutritious it is? Take a look at this chart again. See how nutritious this product is. It's low in calories, good for various low-calorie dishes, and it needs more attention from all of us, especially here in Newfoundland. Now, as you can see, that sauce has been cooking. It's nice and smooth and thick now. The cheese is all melted. It's time to add it to the macaroni. We have the macaroni in the oven-proof bowl. Cheese sauce over. If it's poured over from the top, it doesn't have to be mixed in thoroughly. It will run down in the oven while your macaroni and cheese is in the oven. Cheese sauce over, and if you wish, you can add a few breadcrumbs on top just before you put it into the oven. I have some ready. They'll brown in the oven. You'll have a very attractive dish to serve your family, a very nutritious, inexpensive dish to serve your family. Now you can see the variety of different foods that we prepared with skim milk powder today. You see the corn chowder with the bacon on top that was prepared early on, cookies that have been enriched with skim milk powder for your family, mashed potatoes just ready to go to the table, light and fluffy and extra nutritious, baked custard, very good for your children, good on a hot day, a cold day. It's a popular dish at all times. Macaroni and cheese, that low-cost favorite that we all enjoy. Meatloaf that's been enriched with skim milk powder, and your bread. You can add skim milk powder every time you're making bread, and it will help your whole family live more nutritiously.